Okay, chapter 22. This is actually the last chapter that includes section 2, or it concludes section 2. What we've been going through ever since chapter 10 is basically verse long proverbs. That's what the proverbs are, these pithy little sayings that contain an axiomatic truth. In verse 17 of chapter 22, we transition to collection number 3. And you may have a heading in your Bible that says words of the wise. And these are going to turn into a little bit longer proverbs, like we were in chapters 1 through 9. But we're not there yet. So let's start at verse 1. The main themes we'll see this morning are wealth and speech. So money and your tongue, two very powerful tools in your life. You can use them for godliness, or you can use them for your own destruction. Verse 1 says that a good name is to be chosen rather than great riches, and favors better than silver or gold. So social reputation is built not by the amount of money you have. There are many wealthy people who are rich, but it is not their riches. That was, there are many socially respectable people who are rich, is what I meant to say. Wealthy people are rich. That is true. Married people have wives. I am not a proverb writer, guys, just a proverb reader. Social reputation may be accompanied by wealth, but it is not created by wealth. A good name comes from your commitment to wisdom, discipline, diligence, etc. And these can be built with or without riches. It's better than riches as well. Riches are not bad. They afford people a lot of opportunities in life, and a lot of opportunities to be generous to the poor too. But a good name is more important, and a good name in some ways is easier. Some people just don't have the skills or ability to become rich, but everyone has the opportunity to have a good name. Verse 2, the rich and the poor meet together. There's no division in value in this world between your socioeconomic background. Certainly, there's no division between gender, ethnicity, education level, where you're from, etc. Only sin separates us from God, and only our state before the Lord separates us from each other, from either being a child of darkness or a child of light. God is the maker of all. This shows the common grace that God has given everyone an opportunity on this earth to seek Him out and to know Him, to have a relationship. And so we should view the rich and the poor the same as the Lord does, that we're all the same. Maybe if you ever played sports, you had this saying, well, everybody puts their pants on one leg at a time. And that was to motivate a competitor who's going up against somebody who's better than them. And just to remind you that everyone's equal. They may be better coached, they may have some better skills, but we're all equal. And that should motivate us to serve the Lord with the skills that He's given us. Okay, verse 3, the prudent sees danger and hides himself, but the simple go on and suffer for it. So wise people are careful. Wise people are careful. Here's the reason, verse 4, because the reward for humility and fear of the Lord is riches and honor and life, eternal life. So this good name that we wanted in verse 1, it's the reward for being careful in this world. You got to be careful to be prudent, wise, disciplined. You got to be careful because verse 5, thorns and snares are in the way of the crooked. So how are we careful? By guarding our soul. Remember Proverbs 4. Guard your heart, for from it flow the springs of life. So guard your soul and keep far from the thorns and snares of the crooked. You need to be diligent for your soul. How is someone made rich financially? Well, they're diligent when it comes to their work, business, savings, investments, that they pay attention to every penny. You need to pay attention to every thought of your mind so that your soul is cared for and so that you are careful to not walk in thorns and snares. Now, as you're guarding your soul, you need to also guard your children's soul. Train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he is old, he will not depart from it. Now, this is not a promise necessarily, but how can anyone be sure if he's trained up a child in the way he should go? I think rather you'll see if the child does not depart from the path of life, then it shows that you trained him up. If in fact you trained him up. Some children find the path of life in spite of their parents' lack of diligence in this area. So most people who have godly parents will also be godly. Now, many kids walk away from the faith because their parents were Christian in name only. Verse 7, the rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is the slave of the lender. So this is another axiomatic proverb. If you borrow money, then you are a slave to the person that gives you the money until you pay it back. Now, slave represents a lifelong commitment. So this debt represents a debt that's never able to be paid back. It's a debt where the interest is so high and all you can afford is your interest. So you have become the slave. There's nothing you can do except for die or declare bankruptcy. And so the rich shouldn't charge an interest that can't be paid back. That would be sinful. And the borrower shouldn't borrow something that he can't afford to pay back in a timely manner. But this is not making all debt sinful. Verse 8, whoever sows injustice will reap calamity, and the rod of his fury will fail. Let's read that with verse 9. Whoever has a bountiful eye will be blessed, for he shares his bread with the poor. The bountiful eye is a generous person. That's what that means, a generous person. So the rod of the sinner's fury will fail. Whatever he uses to try to enact his own sense or idea of justice on the world will fail. And one of the things that's going to be the remedy causing his rod of fury to fail is a bountiful eye, which is a generous soul person. So the wrathful person has a rod of fury, but God has a rod of mercy. Who's the rod of mercy? It's the generous person. If you are a generous person and give towards the Lord, towards his church, towards ministries, towards the poor, etc., you have become his rod of mercy. You are how he moves around blessings in the kingdom. And we should all be a part of that system. We receive blessings, we give blessings. So sharing your bread with the poor is not a literal necessity to be generous. it is a it's representative of how generous people behave. Verse 10 and 11 go together, talking about how to protect the community. Well, a scoffer, someone who hates God's ways, will destroy a community. So you need to drive him out because he will quarrel, fight, and abuse people. So get him out of there. The way you get him out of there is implied in verse 11 with the king and with pure speech. So he who loves purity of heart and whose speech is gracious will have the king as his friend, and the king's going to protect the community. This reminds me of the Beatitude as well in Matthew 5. Blessed are those who are pure in heart, for they shall see God. And this here says, we'll have the king as his friend. So obviously you're going to see him. In verse 12, the eyes of the Lord keep watch, which means to make it true. So when the Lord sends out his word, he then keeps watch over it, to guard it, to make it come true. So he keeps watch over knowledge, but he overthrows the words of the traitor. So if you're in a situation that needs God's knowledge, speak up, because God's going to watch over his word. If you know God's will for that situation, speak up. Verse 13 and 14 go together, and they're two examples of bad speech. The lazy person, the sluggard, says, there's a lion outside. I shall be killed in the streets. He's making up an excuse, a ridiculous excuse. A lion in Israel? Seriously? Like, no. He just doesn't want to get out of bed. What kind of excuses do you make in your life that when you back up really make no sense? Verse 14 is a seductive speech. The mouth of the forbidden woman is a deep pit, which represents death. He with whom the Lord is angry will fall into it. And this tells us the important truth to wrestle with, perhaps, that God ordains a sinner's death. God ordains everything, so it shouldn't come to any surprise to anyone that God ordains a sinner's death in this way. The way God judges people is he just gives them over to their sin, and sin destroys. The wages of sin is death. Now, if he sees in your life a responsiveness to wisdom and to the fruit of the Spirit and to truth, well, then he'll turn you, he'll guide you. Remember, he in verse 21, the king's heart is a stream of water in the hand of the Lord. Well, what about those who are less than a king, like all of us? Same, he guides us as he sees us gravitating towards light, he guides us to more light. And so that's something that can be prayed about too. Constantly, I'm praying to God that he would grow my desire for him, grow my wisdom. So that's 14. 15, folly is bound up in the heart of a child, but the rod of discipline drives it far from him. So folly is so intertwined with who a child is that we must get it out of there through discipline. Rod represents the method of discipline. You may be against spanking. Well, this doesn't, I mean, obviously Rod here kind of hints towards the fact that he's using something to spank the kid, but Rod can just represent the method by which you discipline. It's a metonymy. Metonymy is when you use a single object to represent a bunch of things. So when I say the rod, in that word is all the methods of discipline. When I say a suit, it's talking about a business executive. Okay, cool. New word for you, metonymy. And those are all throughout the Proverbs. That's why I bring that up. That's why we don't read this so literal, because it's poetry, and that figure of speech, metonymy, is all throughout it. So you got to Like for instance, I'll point out some other ones. I was about to point to one that isn't one. Okay. So we got to have a method of discipline that helps get folly out of a child. And one of the things we need to teach our children is verse 16. If someone oppresses the poor to increase his own wealth or gives to the rich, they will only come to poverty. Okay, so that's the end of collection number 2, which is chapter 10 all the way to 22. Now we're in collection 3, and we have 30 words of the wise. 30 words of the wise. Verse 17 through 21 is the introduction to collection 3. So it starts off very similar to some of those letters in collection 1. Remember chapters 1 through 9. He says, incline your ear, hear the words of the wise, apply your heart. For, we got a reason, it will be pleasant if you keep them within you. That means literally in your belly. Keep these in your belly. That's what the Hebrew means there. If all of them are ready on your lips, that's going to be pleasant if you have these things prepared. That's why we memorize scripture. So they're inside of us that we can use at any time throughout the day. That's why the Proverbs were written in this form, because anyone could memorize them. In the Hebrew, they're a lot easier to memorize than in English. That your trust may be in the Lord. Verse 19. This is the whole purpose of all this. We want to have a relationship with the Lord and know him and walk with him in every trial and circumstance in life. We have to have wisdom to do that. There's so many things we're going to face in this world, so we need his wisdom. Verse 20 tells us that we're in a new section. Have I not written for you 30 sayings of counsel and knowledge? And that's the first one. The first one is that we have 30 sayings. To make you know what is right and true, that you may give a true answer to those who sent you. Okay, so that's the first one. Second one, do not rob the poor because he is poor, or crush the afflicted at the gate, for the Lord will plead their cause and rob of life those who rob them. Take care of the poor, be generous. That's a common theme throughout the Proverbs. How you look at the poor represents a lot about your own heart. Verse 24 and 25 is the third saying. Make no friendship with a man given to anger, nor go with a wrathful man. This is a deeply flawed individual who is given to anger or is described as a wrathful man. If you make friends with him, you will be influenced by him. So this teaches us two things: that we need to choose our friends carefully, and that wrath and anger are extremely deep issues that need to go back to the folly bound up in the heart of a child. It needs to be driven from us. If we have anger or wrath, we need to get that out of us as diligently as possible. Verse 26 and 27 is the fourth saying. Be not one of those who gives pledges, who put up security for debts. So don't promise to pay back for a stranger or somebody, because you can't vouch for them. Now, if it's something that you could easily afford to give, well, then just give it. Don't pledge it, because this is what happens. Your bed may be taken from you. Okay, bed is a metonymy for all of your possessions, right? So this isn't just worried about your bed. Your bed represents all that you own. So this is why you shouldn't do that. Verse 28, don't move the ancient landmark that your fathers have set. Those are boundary markers. So let's say you got a little old lady living next to you, and you're like, she'll never notice if I move this boundary marker. I'm going to increase my land. Then the next people move in, and they're like, oh, I guess I got a small yard. That guy's got a big yard. No, don't do that. It shows no integrity. And then verse 29, do you see a man skillful in his work? He will stand before kings. He will not stand before obscure men. This word skillful. Skillful does not mean that you're naturally talented or gifted in this sense. It's the Hebrew word mahir. This is a readiness that comes from discipline. That's a skillful person. Skillfulness is not something to brag about, it's something that shows morality. It's something that shows that you have been diligent in your life for the honor and glory of God, for the purposes of being basically expressing your gratitude for life and and showing that you understand how life works, that we were put on this earth to work and to be diligent with something. And when you do that on one thing for a long time, you're going to become skillful in it. So this is not naturally brilliant. This is someone who's been sharpened, who is reliable under pressure, who knows what to do and does it well. This is someone who has earned their competence, not just have, walked into excellence, like someone who's super tall so they get put on the basketball court versus someone who trains every single day for 2 hours, make sure he shoots 50 or shoot 500 free throws every day. That's skillful. That's the skill that God honors and wants us um, to work towards. And remember, this is not just in our work, but this is also in our faith. We need to be skillful in our faith, and you need to be constantly in the Word and in prayer and practicing these things like they're your job, so that you're always ready when called upon. Uh, Not just in class if someone calls you to pray, but when life's trials hit, you're ready with the Word. You're ready with prayer to navigate those things with wisdom and fear of the Lord, i.e., faith. All right, well, that's chapter 22. And yeah, that word skillful is just really ringing out in my ear. So, what do you need to be more skillful in? Where do you need to grow in readiness by being disciplined in a certain area of your life? Maybe ask the Lord to reveal that and um, begin to grow in that area with more patience and diligence.